goodness. When I fail to see a loving world, I'm failing to see the eternal reality that God created. When I'm seeing fear and chaos and turmoil, then I'm seeing that which is perishable. And what we're being invited to do is to remember that moment before we forgot to think that we could do anything of our own will. That moment before we believed in a will separate, that we had a will separate from God's. And our invitation is, as in sentence 5, to perceive anew so that I can perceive again. For me, that brings me so much comfort because I just have to remember. And, we were talking about in an earlier class that how quickly I can forget. And I use the example of 10 days ago, I was reading lesson 161 about how my brothers are my salvation, and my opportunity is to perceive all of my brothers in every situation, every circumstance, as the light and the Christ mind. And that's my opportunity. And then you roll the clock forward to yesterday, and I was sharing with my husband, Mark, a situation. He said, well, I was reading lesson 161, and in 9 short days, I had forgotten the entire lesson. And the application, and I was right back to seeing my brother as in a not very good light. And I'm not going to say who it was because it doesn't matter. And so what brings me such great hope, though, is that it's not like I have to go to school for 12 years. It's an instantaneous choice. And it only took me 9 days to remember it, where before it could have taken me 9 weeks or 9 months. And the more we do this work, the miracle is that can show up in 9 seconds, literally. And in truth, that's what happened when I was sharing with Mark. And he said, well, I saw this lesson, and within 9 seconds, I was able to perceive myself and my brother in a different light. Powerful. That's where I want to live. That's the street I want to live on.
That's a sacred female mentality, too. It's impressive. Mm.
Mm. So then paragraph 2, every loving thought that the Son of God ever had is eternal. Wow. The loving thoughts his mind perceives in this world are the world's only reality. They are still perceptions because he still believes that he is separate. Yet they are eternal because they are loving. And being loving, they are like the Father, and therefore cannot die. The real world can actually be perceived. All that is necessary is a willingness to perceive nothing else. For if you perceive both good and evil, you are accepting both the false and the true and making no distinction between them. This was a real big leap for me. I don't know how it has been for you. It was really a big leap for me to understand that there is a place in my mind where only God exists and where only the kingdom of abundance, acceptance, truth, and love exists. There is a place. And the beautiful thing is, as I look back over my life, I had all these little seeds that were planted little by little along the way. There's a song when I was in college, and I was in this group, and it was a singing group, and there were 3 gentlemen who played trumpets. and they would do all their own arranging. And there was this song called There Is a Quiet Place. I have longed to find it. You know, I'm now reconnected to one of those guys. I should reach out to him and ask him if he has a recording of that, now that I think about it. He and his wife just celebrated their anniversary. And I remember it was an instrumental song. There were no words. But I remember whenever they would play that song, I would just feel so transported. And even talking about it now, it would take me into a place in my mind where there was no conflict. There was only kingdom state. And this is the promise that we're being given here, that we can perceive this, and we'll perceive it until we reach the state of knowledge when we've decided this body is of no more use to us and we'll return to our eternal state. But in the meantime, even in our body state, we can perceive and have those experiences of that kingdom state. Really so powerful. So anyone else have any examples before we turn the time over to Brenda about this is living a course in miracles in our daily lives. So this is actually how it plays out every day for us. So anyone else have any examples of how paragraph 1 or 2 is or is not showing up for you that you'd be willing to share?
I would just offer that it's challenging lately for me, as we discussed on the last call. Right now, it is a conscious effort to just stay in loving peacefulness and that state. It's been a challenge lately. I don't know, just energetically in the world. It's been a lot of ego flashes lately, so it's hard to apply. Not impossible, but hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Mark, anything that you would like to share before we turn the time over to Brenda?
Well, I think the most important thing is, I mean, at least for me, the ego wants me to think that this is hard. Mm-hmm. Because it keeps us in the soup. Again, what the Course is emphasizing, it's not asking us to change anything. You don't have to change your thoughts. You don't have to stop doing anything. We just have to be willing to look at it. That is the great, we all promised ourselves, we you know, this, it's one mind, but so it goes back to, it doesn't matter who the person, who we think that it is that we are. What matters is just look at it. Like, that's one of the neatest things about the Course, is that you don't, it's not asking you to change anything. It's not asking you to give up anything. But what will happen is at least what happens for me is if I'm willing to look at it, what happens is I start to realize what I'm giving up. What am I giving up? I'm giving up my peace. I'm giving up, wow. and it's not worth it. And how does that happen? It happens by us being willing to just look at I mean, just for me, look at what I'm doing. Just look at it. And if I don't want to change it right now because I just want to enjoy my ego attack, okay. I know eventually I'll be willing to give it up, because everybody gets where they think they are going, which is nowhere. I mean, it's really not very romantic, and I'm not trying to minimize the way anyone on this call is feeling at all. That's not my intent. But I think that, you know, we should never, as the Course talks about, never ever underestimate the ego. And how's the ego undone? We just have to be willing to look at the picture. And don't look at the frame, as it talks about. Just look. And eventually we will get where we'll go, wow, that's really not serving me. It doesn't make me feel good. I don't want to do that. And we think it will take time. It's the ego. We want to make things complicated. We want to make things hard. Why? Because that keeps us in ego identification. The ego loves attention. I mean, think about, especially now with social media, it is like me fest 24/7. Look at me, look at me. I mean, for me, there is no me. So I have to get used to the idea. How do I get used to the idea? I look at it. Anyway, you wanted my thoughts? There you go.
Yeah, in paragraph 2, sentence 6, the real world can actually be perceived. We actually can perceive and see our kingdom state. All that is necessary is a willingness to perceive nothing else. When I'm willing to decide that I only want to see kingdom in my life, when I'm willing, that's what's necessary. And Holly, you have a saying about the price of not having peace. What's that saying that you?
If it costs my peace, it's too expensive.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, if it costs my peace, it's too expensive. Beautiful. All right. Well, we are going to turn the time now over to my dear friend Brenda. And I meant to, for those of you who are going to be watching this later, apologies for the little roam that you're going to take to get here. So in this day of technology, it doesn't always work out perfectly. So Brenda is my guest tonight, and Brenda believes that knowledge empowers the mind and wisdom is found in strength of the heart. And we believe through the lens of a camera, a single thought can change the world, that beauty inspires, and through faith, the impossible becomes possible. Mystery unfolds to those who listen, an intelligent, limitless power of something greater than we know silently calls. Do you hear it? Do you see it? Seek it? Do you awaken it? Leave a brilliant light behind. So Brenda and I had the opportunity to meet one another several years ago, actually through an introduction to a friend, and Brenda spent some time with Lindsay, and everything has just kind of nourished and flourished and unfolded since. So Brenda, I'm just going to turn the time over to you to share with us for about the next 20 minutes, whatever's on your heart about your journey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, man, meeting Lindsay and Laurenti was like a definite, I always want to say hashtag game changer, you know. It was probably one of the most pivotal, you guys were like, it's funny because we do a production company, and we do a lot of stories and, you know, commercials, documentaries, you know, so we specialize in scripts and stories and screenplays and blah, blah, blah. And the cool thing about that is we're all kind of writing our own. And I think that's why we're so drawn to story and to everything like that. So there's something called a catalyst character. A catalyst character drives a change. And Laurenti and Lindsay were that for me, because it was like, I was getting to a place, let's see, okay, I don't even think you know this, Laurenti, so I'm excited to share this little nugget. Before I met you guys, I actually had a near-death experience, and I don't know if anyone on the call has had something like that or come close to it or anything like that, but it kind of changes. It changes the way you look at things, and you realize, you know, I shouldn't really be here. I'm here for a reason, and it gives you instantaneous, like you know you're here for something, you know, instantaneously. So I was floating off I got in like a riptide in the ocean. Like the ocean has been after me. The water has been trying to get me for a long time. So it almost got me, and I was in a place where I was so far out in the ocean off the coast of Fiji, which is saturated with sharks. I think it's like what, great white bull sharks, tiger sharks, what other, oh my gosh, it's like every kind of shark you could imagine. And I felt the ground drop off. So like the water went from warm to like dramatically cool, which means I could no longer touch the ground. And I was so far out. So I laid on my back and I cried to God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. And now crying is different than praying. It's, you know it when you do it. And 2 minutes later, out of the distance comes this, you know, quintessential stereotypical, like, you know, Fijian David Hasselhoff, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, I saw the red shorts running and I could barely believe it. And what was interesting about this man is he made Michael Phelps like swim like a wuss. Like this guy got out so fast, and he almost had a wake to him, like a boat would have a wake. And he got out there so fast. So not only did he have to drag me back, but then he swam, you know, in a riptide, you swim with it. And so he was doing that, but even like swimming with it was still projecting out to sea. So in a way, it's like he was swimming against the current. He gets me on the ground. I could barely believe it. I mean, I had been out there fighting I didn't have a life vest. You know, it's really shallow for a long time. And then, so I was like, oh, I don't need it. I'm just going to be walking. But yeah. So I was exhausted. I laid on the ground and I was so happy to just touch the ground. Like the ground was the most beautiful thing in the world to me. And there was something very interesting I noticed about this man. Like he wanted to make sure I was okay. Are you okay, ma'am? And I was like bawling, oh, you saved my life. Thank you so much. Like, but there was just something I knew that was interesting about him. So anyways, I put my head down to take off my slipper and just kind of get those off. And then I look up and he's gone, like just gone. And I'm like, whoa, you know, it's like, how do you process that? You're already in shock. And so a couple months later, I shared with one of the people on my crew. I was like, hey, you know, like I almost didn't come home with you guys on the plane and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, and I told her, and then she's like, didn't you see at the resort that there were signs all over that said no lifeguard on duty? And I was like, oh man, I knew it. And then I think 2 weeks later, or maybe a week even, I got on a call with Lindsay and Laurenti. And I just made that choice right then to, and this is so cool how this is the condition of reality. And you guys are talking about like good, evil, or duality, or whatever you want to call it. And how we observe that, because this is kind of, it just flows together. So that day, and after I talked to them, I was just like, you know what? I just got so tired of like it just seemed like everything had a little momentum, and then I was just like, and then something would happen that it would just like, you know, they like two boats passing in the night, you know, like, and it was, sometimes they get pretty close, and it was just like, I'm like, why does it feel like I'm pushing a boulder up the hill? And after that call, I just decided to get out of the way. I'm surrendering it. So I'm dying in myself. I'm dying in my ego. I'm getting out of the way of the finite mind so the infinite mind can operate, because who wants to work finitely? I mean, it's so limited, and it's, you know, easier said than done. You get to a place, and then, you know, you hit a level, and then the bigger test comes, and then you pass that one, and then another one comes. And I think we could all agree, just like what's going on in the world collectively right now, that these tests are coming in. And like you said, it's kind of hard to see. It's hard to live from that space when there's just chaos going on around us and everything like that. So I had an interesting saying come to me the other day, and God, or the infinite, redeems man, and man redeems duality, or whatever we call evil, or the lack of light, I guess. And so when we when we start to look at that and we release it, we surrender it, boy, that's where the beauty is. That's where it lies. And it's scary. It's like, oh my gosh. So I've kind of put together like a little bit of through my personal experience, I've been able to understand in a physical, egotistical world as we know it, or like a world that dies and everything, it obeys certain laws of physics. And those laws are, so there's gravity, electromagnetism, strong force, which is what holds us like an atom together, and then weak force, which is what, allows the atom to fall apart eventually, or radioactive decay. And moving forward through my mission, I've understood that there's a higher law, and that governs the what is it, the infinite, if you will, and it's faith, or having whatever your version of faith is, and that's and it's simply putting the Holy Spirit into action, or turning the spiritual into a physical, as like when you're being the antenna or the conduit, and the clearer your antenna, the clearer that energy, that pure energy, can flow through you. Yeah, it's just, and it comes in waves. Like you get a little test, and then you kind of you make the choice, and then then another one comes, and a little at a time you get more and more, and before you know it, you're doing things you would not even imagine. Like you'd be like, if you would have told me a year ago I was going to be doing that, I'd be like, no way, man. So, but by getting out of the way, this is kind of a funny thing. I call it commuting with Jehovah, or commuting with God. So, when you're commuting, you're not driving. Well, in this way, you're not driving the car. You're commuting. So you're in the passenger seat, and you're allowing the infinite, limitless mind to run your life, run your programs. No longer this, it's like your blinders come off, and it like what it feels like in like simple words is like from am I to I am. Just shifting those words is powerful, and it creates an energetic force. And I've also understood down in this realm, or this reality as we know it, is something that doesn't exist in the higher realms, is time. Like a linear, we have time's like one of my favorite subjects. I could go on and on, but I only have 20 minutes. So, but time is actually one of our greatest teachers, and time, or lack of time, it's the uncomfortable beauty that this world offers. And so when we can look at that as a blessing instead of something that's working against us, it's like it changes so much. So why is this so hard to, why are we constantly faced with these this fear, this chaos, realities that are being constant, like Mark said, they constantly need to be fed. I love your term, the me fest. I don't know if you'll let me use that or not. That's a good one. The me fest. It's borrowed energy. It needs constant attention. It needs, like, instead of creating it your own, like, 0.0 energy of the I am that we know, that we are remembering that we already are. And then here's, like, I love this. I don't even know where this thought came to me one time, but it's like, fears are illusions of powers we already possess. I'll say that one more time. Fears are illusions of powers we already possess. So here's an interesting, as we go through and we are writing screenplays and scripts, and what we've been noticing is a lot of the times we're writing the villain first. The villain defines the hero and these stories, and then as I kind of think about it, like, especially what's going on and in our faith today, is like, we can see that like, there's so much money spent, billions annually spent through military tactics of, like, knowing our enemy, like knowing what our enemy or our illusion of our enemy is going to do before, so it's like you're reverse engineering these things, these illusions. And it's kind of cool because when you reverse engineer things, you can understand what's coming in a way. It's almost like you're able to kind of put the puzzle together. And what I love about that too is, like, when we feel like we have, like, just storms coming at us left and right, it's actually an illusion of how powerful you really are. Like, because think about it, if you had a breach in say a military, there's a breach, like there's a weak force over here, you're going to send a lot of people over there to guard that weak force, or to get on that weak force. And so that would be like, if you feel like the storm is coming at you, that's because whatever you're doing is dead on and you're a threat. Like, you're starting to remember who you are. You're getting out of this stagnant, and yeah, I think of this, I love Matthew 10. I take it with me to a lot of, and I'll get into kind of what we've been doing on a film production realm, but it's Matthew 10:16. I don't know if you guys share scriptures on here or anything, but this one's pretty awesome. It is, "Behold, I send you forth as a sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and as harmless as doves." And I love that because it's like you're not a sitting duck. You're aware, and you're, but another part is, like, we like to look at our weaknesses as they are, like, we're insecure about our weaknesses, right? But what I've come to understand is my weaknesses, or your weaknesses, are your greatest strengths. Because think about the reverse engineering of that. Why are they after or whatever, the illusions? Why is it trying to make you believe that this, because when you they're like wounds that if you can connect to the highest, they actually shoot out. It's the most light can come out through those. In a way, it's like, I'm always taught with, like, what's down here, like scar tissue. I look at the biology of scar tissue. It's stronger than the original tissue. Just kind of cool. So yeah, so we write, the heroes are defined through the villain. And I just look at, like, like Abraham Lincoln, all this illusion of resistance that we believe is, that is actually, it's harming us. It's actually defining us. Like, Civil War defined Abraham Lincoln. Like, World War II got, drove Albert Einstein to create some of the most amazing, like, equations and mentalities of our time as we know. I also had this interesting experience where I slammed my finger in a door, and my fingernail came off, and it was like all gross and brown and whatever. But I was like, when your fingernail comes off, you're really sensitive to, like, when you touch your finger on something again, it kind of hits it. You almost got it kind of like a phantom pain of the original. So it's like super aware of, like, my thumb, which I wasn't before I had hit it. So I was like, but one of the things that came to me kind of is like, gosh, without that resistant, like, force of that thumb pushing at, like, whatever, I wasn't able to do much of an action without my thumb. Like, I was trying to flat iron my hair, and I just had like 4 fingers, and I'm like, so I was like, gosh, that's kind of an interesting, I just hadn't never thought of it like that before. Another really interesting, and this might be kind of cool for what's going on right now, but I was teaching one of my friends how to ski. I'm up in Utah, and so there's a lot of skiing up here, and he's like, gosh, there's so many things that could, there's a lot of variables, right? There's a lot of danger around. Like, you have an avalanche, you have fog in the air, you have bumps on the things, you have trees, you have rocks, and just throughout the day, we were working on the technique of all of these, illusions of trials, right? And so I was like teaching him the technique. And when you get out of a wedge, when you point your 2 skis together, you're like resisting the whole ground. Like, and it's really hard on your legs, and you can only do it for like an hour, and you're just toast, So I was like, so we got him out of the wedge, and I started to teach the technique of going through. So instead of allowing these trials to resist, and like you're like going through them, allow them to move through you, and then all of a sudden things get easier. It starts to become fun. Actually, you're like, ooh, this is it starts to become a playground a little bit. And I don't mean to use that word lightly, as there's many things going on, but like you start to, it's not heavy anymore. It's light. It's invigorating. It's like you're doing what you came here to do, and it feels good. And it's like you're knowing these techniques. Another thing I noticed, like when you watch water go down a river. So when a water goes down a river, it doesn't always go. It takes the shortest path, but it doesn't mean it's the easiest. Sometimes it can crash into a boulder and cause a class 5 rapid or whatever, or it meanders off and then it comes back, or whatever area whatever mission or whatever path that water was supposed to go, it goes. But what it does, it is the most efficient way to get from one place to the next. And it's always through going through, there's these trials, or these illusions of trials. They push us to extraordinary places. And I've just, this has been definitely something that I've been really needing, and what we've been doing with our filming group and everything. But like, it's so funny because like there's no power that exists in this universe that can stand between you, other than you and connecting with it all, other than your own. So like, you're the one who decides. And like we all have a unique fingerprint. Like there's, when we look at a snowflake, we see there's not a single snowflake that's duplicate. And that in so many ways is like a little sweet little lesson of like, is like we all have we all know it's not like we're just here having fun, doing whatever. Like we're here for a reason. And you know, what is our fingerprint? And by dying in the self or the ego, you're able to receive what that is, and what can you do for God, for the universe, for the collective, instead of living in this linear Newtonian model, like the cause and the effect. The apple drops and it hits the ground. And by activating our faith or our higher belief, or getting out of the way, you drop more into the quantum realm, which is like the Einstein model. It's we decide to be the cause of the effect. And so that's just been so I've been faced with some of the I couldn't have done what I'm doing now without going into that way of navigating the way I see the world. Because so my film crew, we're in the anti-child trafficking genre, and I love the condition of reality lesson that's pulled up here today, and I love what you said, Lorendi, about looking at your brother. So it's so hard to look at this, everyone's trying to make this solution, right? There's always this, let's put this money and do this solution or do that, but end the fight, or whatever. Even the word choices, when you're trying to fight something, you're continually perpetuating it. So there still is resistance. What we're being asked to do is we're going into it with absolute love, because the perpetrator is as captive as the victim. Mm-hmm. And so to see some of the darkest corners of the earth, and then still look at your brother, sister, with love. It's the highest love you can. And it's they don't know. They have blinders on and they don't know. And that's the female, the female energy. And I believe that's what's going to heal. What we're saying, it's gonna bring our collective frequency up to the place of Christ conscious, which Lorendi speaks of. And that's the only way. I mean, we've proven over and over, fighting fire with fire perpetually gets more and more chaotic. And man redeems duality. We have to decide that I'm not going to give you attention anymore. And that is so painful that's what I've gathered is how it ends, how we ascend, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Brenda, you've said so many incredible things tonight. I want to encapsulate a few of them. I was taking some notes.
Please.
I'm going to go back and listen to this recording over and over and over again, which is normally what I do. We record these and they're on our Miracle Activation Center YouTube channel. And I was kind of teasing with myself the other day that I really think I record them for me, because I do go back and listen to them. And so you spoke about, a couple of interesting things that you talked about sharks, because it's Shark Week this week. So
is it really?
Yeah, so it's so interesting that you're talking about that. And there's all of these specials all over Netflix and TV of, people wrangling
You're
sharks.
right.
That's interesting. And we also have a similar story, because I was in Hawaii and I got caught in a riptide. And
oh my gosh.
So that was when I first learned. Fortunately, I was with someone who grew up in Hawaii, so he taught me of going with the tide. You're not swimming with the tide instead of against it, and it saved my life. So that was a powerful lesson of learning.
Also sharks are, the animals too are experiencing this chaos because it's a frequency that and sharks, like, they're having a lot more shark attacks because the chaos of the earth. I mean, it hits the animal kingdom too, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So when you were speaking about that, you know, the laws of this earth, you know, the gravity, electromagnetism, the strong force, the weak force, and we often talk about on this call that, you know, Jesus said that in this world, in this temporal existence, you will have trouble, but fear not, for I have overcome the world. And that's that higher law that governs all of this temporal. I also really love how you talked about the who am I is borrowed energy and the I am is the infinite energy. So when we're always walking around saying, who am I? What am I doing? Who am I? That's borrowed energy, and it has its limits. And Course in Miracles talks about that everyone's pain is high, but it's not without limit. And I also love how you talked about that the fear is the illusion of our greatness. Marianne Williamson says that it's not our fear that frightens us, but it's actually our magnitude that frightens us and the light that's powerful within us. And so I'm so appreciative of how you brought that in. Wow. And I'm really we're looking forward to continuing to follow your path. Brenda, you took some really bold leaps over the last couple of years. You were working for an international multi-billion-dollar industry and decided that Stellestial Productions was where you were meant to hang your hat. And so you opened that company, and you're doing such incredible work. You mentioned some of the product projections that you're working on. And I think that I find it so interesting that you are the Christ in a very situation that seems very dark, and that we cannot heal problems like child trafficking and human trafficking with the same mindset that created those atrocities in the first place. We need the Christ consciousness in order to change, to make those changes. And so thank you so much for being on the front lines and being the Christ mind. One final thought about that is in Richard Rohr, who's one of our favorite authors, talks about this as well. And Course in Miracles specifically says that within every one of us, no matter how dim, is the mind of Christ and the light of Christ. And so I try to remember that, and I don't always do it, but I try to remember that when I'm looking at any of my brothers or sisters, that irrespective of how we may be behaving and how dim that light might be, the light of Christ is always there, placed securely where God placed it at the moment he created us. So
yeah, you're like alchemizing love and hate.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. Yeah.
So we have just a couple minutes. Holly, anything that you would like to share? Brenda, Holly is one of our ministerial students in training, and she already is, and she's going out into the world as a Course in Miracles teacher and student. So Holly, anything you would like to share with Brenda?
Well, I just love that. Thank you so much, Brenda. I mean, my takeaways are just really getting out of your own way. I love how you just are such a survivor, and you just that near-death experience to really kind of recalibrate everything and to show you what is important. And I also love the female energy, because obviously that's just amazing. So I'll be listening to this call again. Absolutely too. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the female energy, it activates the sacred male energy. And I don't understand it fully, but I don't think they can access it until the female accesses hers.
It's true. And, we throughout since man began, since the history of this temporal existence began, it's interesting that some of the greatest atrocities have been at the hands of women with other women. And so it's why I'm so sensitive to women. And then I'm going to say something a little political here. Holly knows I don't go there normally, but this whole, thing around, the whole Karen, movement, whatever that is, as females, we need to simply love one another, because we have done so much harm to one another through jealousy and whatever story that was. But at the end of the day, it's the ego consciousness trying to hold back that feminine, that divine feminine that is so necessary to usher us into the next phases. We could spend 3 whole calls just on that. So thank you so much for bringing that out, Brenda, and acknowledging.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm so grateful you're my sister, and that we as a collective here, there's only women left on this call now, and it's a call to all of us to, above all, love one another and to support all women on their journey. So yes, Ying Ying, anything that you would like to share with Brenda before we go? You're muted, Ying Ying.
Sorry, I just thought it was really wonderful. I really liked it. I'm gonna have to listen to it again, because I think when I was listening, I just got into some kind of like zone, you know what I mean? So I felt what you were saying, even though my brain was like, I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I do that all the time.
Yeah, so
it's a lot.
I really felt like what you said went deep in my brain, even though technically it bypassed part of my brain. But yeah.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you.
And it's part of what Brenda says, is that knowledge empowers the mind, and wisdom is found in the strength of the heart. And so that wisdom is what we're looking for.
That's like the 12-inch journey, right? When you're trying to meditate and you're trying to get there and your mind's going like thought, and then you take that energy and you waterfall it to your heart. You can it's instantly like changes. There's an instant change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
The heart actually it's developed in the fetus before the brain. We like to think that the brain controls the heart, but it's the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time or re-listening in, of course, you can find us every Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern time, where we do a study of these principles and these concepts. And then every Tuesday night, 7 p.m., we have special guests who come and share their experiences of their awakening. And so we hope you'll join us often. And you can always reach us at miracleactivationcenter.com. And of course, on our YouTube channel, also under Miracle Activation Center, all of these recordings are live there. So thank you so much, everyone. Have an amazing rest of your week. And we'll plan to see you on Sunday.